Hello, everyone. We're running a little bit thin tonight because we're without Jeffrey since we started the podcast a little bit past his bedtime. I'm joined here with Jay, Austin, and then I believe Jordan had the topic this week. Jordan, you want to go ahead and kick us off?
Sure thing, Win. So this week, instead of talking about something that is a personal experience like we did the past 2 weeks, I figured we should do something that's a little more relevant, and that's going on in the news. And I didn't want to do anything too political. So a story that I had been seeing multiple times this week was the Amber Guyger case. Um, and I don't know about you guys, but I really like studying different crime-related things. So this really interested me. But in case you guys don't know, Amber Guyger is a former Dallas police officer who is charged with the murder of Botham John
Wait,
last
quick,
year.
quick note, Jordan. I believe she was with the sheriff's department.
Um, okay, the reports that I read said police officer.
Oh,
So
I could be wrong. I just saw
yeah.
it really quickly.
I'm reading off of a report right now.
Oh, okay. My
Okay,
bad. My bad.
okay. Fake news. Um, so she's a former Dallas cop now, but she recently got convicted of murdering Botham John, who was a 26-year-old from the Caribbean island of Saint Lucia. Not that that matters, but he was a U.S. citizen, but he was born in Saint Lucia. So where the case gets interesting is how she killed him, why she killed him, and when she killed him. So um, she had just gotten off of a 13-hour shift because, like I said, she was a cop, and she lived in this apartment complex. Now the apartments, I don't know how many stories total there were, but it sounds like there was some type of parking garage. So this is in the Dallas area, so
Yeah, I think
very
there were.
populated.
Sorry, I just want to fill in some details there. There were at least three stories because I believe she lived on the third floor. He lived on the second floor.
He lived on the fourth, she lived on the third.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
Sorry again, guys. Fake news.
Jeez. Um, yeah, so she had just gotten off of a 13-hour shift and she drove onto the fourth floor thinking it was the third floor. Now, Botham John's apartment was directly above hers. So if you've ever been in any type of apartment complex, the layout of all of them are the same. So if you go into one uh, that's in the same exact location, a floor up, the layout of the apartment will obviously be the same in most cases, and it was here. So she drives to the fourth floor thinking it's the third. Um, so she gets out of her vehicle and approaches what she thinks is her apartment, and reports say this is according to her defense that the door was slightly propped open, and this was proven because he had a faulty door, so it didn't shut all the way, or occasionally it wouldn't shut all the way. So when she went to stick her key in the lock, it just pushed the door open. So she could never really tell that, like, oh, my key's not fitting in this lock. So when she goes inside, and this is, the police haven't really revealed. Well, maybe I should study the case more, but from to my knowledge, the police haven't revealed what exact evidence they have. But apparently, Botham was eating an ice cream cone, but he was standing up in what I believe is the kitchen. But when she entered, she realized something wasn't right, and again, she's still of the mindset that this is her apartment, and so she pulls out her pistol because she just had finished her shift, and he didn't go at her, but he started yelling like, "Hey, hey, hey!" I'm sure he was trying to calm the situation, but she was screaming. She said she was screaming, "Let me see your hands! Let me see your hands!" Um, and I guess she couldn't see his hands. He wasn't able to lift them above his head in an area where she could see them. I'm sure it was crazy for both of them, but at that point, she started to fear for her life, and she fired 2 shots. I believe both entered his chest, and he died on the scene. Um, and when asked if during the trial, when asked if she was shooting to kill, she said she was. She's quoted as saying, uh, I don't know if it's a direct quote, but essentially she thought self-defense was her last option, but that's what she chose to do. She thought she was defending herself. Um, Now, there's a number of reasons why she could have been distracted. One, she could have been tired. A 13-hour shift, that's pretty long. Two, she was also having an affair. I don't believe she was with
This is a
anybody.
complicated case, basically, and
Eh,
I'm guessing it went over several days.
Yeah.
The murder was like a year ago.
The murder was a
murder-
year. Okay, so if we go through every detail, it's going to take a long time. But
Yeah. Yeah.
I think we
This-
get the gist of what happened by now.
Yeah, I'm just setting the scene here. I'm not. I want to get to the sentencing, but before I do, I don't want to make it out to seem like I have a preconceived bias that she did nothing wrong, because there was. If you go to the where she parked, there's clear signs that it's the fourth floor. And she was also on the phone at the time with the person she was having an affair with. I don't know if that was through text or through calling, so that also could have been a distraction. Anyways, the jury came to a unanimous decision of a guilty verdict, guilty of murder, even though the judge said that they could convict her of manslaughter. Or they were allowed to use, I forget what the specific law is called, but it's similar to stand your ground law, pretty much saying she's innocent because she had to use self-defense. But they went with the murder conviction, which I personally agree with. But she was sentenced to only 10 years in prison. So that's where there's a bit of controversy. So given the things that I just said, I was wondering what your virgin take, I guess, since you haven't heard much about it, is on the conviction, whether or not you think it's justifiable or if it should be longer, or if you believe she was genuinely practicing self-defense.
Well, based on the article I read, I'm not sure I can trust what I thought about this anymore, because apparently all the facts I got were very different from what you said. Like, even just the fact that you said Botham Jean died on the scene. I had heard that he was taken to the hospital and died there. But so I don't know what to trust anymore.
Where is this report from that you're reading, Jordan? Where's the report from?
This is what I'm reading now is a BuzzFeed report, but that's only because it puts it in chronological order. I've read all of this information in separate reports as well. So, as far as him, let me check and see if he did die on the scene.
I mean,
it doesn't matter.
The details
I
are
don't
not
care.
important.
Anyways,
Another key point about that, though, is that after she shot him, she went outside and didn't try to assist him. She was on the phone with the person that she was having an affair with. And I think that's a key point, because that was something the prosecution brought up. Why did you not try to resuscitate this man after you shot him?
Well, a note that I also noticed during when you were going through the evidence about the door not shutting all the way, I thought it was interesting you said the defense used that, because I do know the prosecution used that fact as well. Because according I guess, to police officer standards for a situation like this, if a door is unlocked and shows signs of a burglary, you're supposed to not enter the building, or the room, I guess, in this case, and instead you're supposed to kind of like fall back and call for backup, which she didn't do. She just walked in, pulled out her gun. So I do know they use that as well in the prosecution, which I think is interesting.
Yeah. It says evidence showed that John's door was defective and had not fully closed after he had returned home from running errands that night. When Guyger put her key in the lock, she said it pushed the door open. Now, it's because there's conflicting stories, because the prosecution says that she shot him while he was sitting on the couch. The defense says that he was either standing up or that he attempted to lunge at her or something like that. I would like to know if her police cam was on. I doubt it because she was just getting off her shift, but that would be some useful information, obviously. Um, but I personally think it's a super light sentence, especially when you got convicted of murder. I can see her getting convicted of manslaughter and this being justifiable if it's manslaughter, but when you're convicted of murder, being sentenced to 10 years does not seem justifiable to me.
Yeah, well, for me, the debate really is just between manslaughter and murder. I think you had said something about the stand your ground rule or law before. And that one, I don't know why that would come into play in this scenario because it was his apartment. So, really, wouldn't he be the one standing his ground since she wandered into his apartment?
It's whatever ground you want it to be.
It's his ground, man. He's standing it.
It's her ground, his ground. It's my ground, really.
Yeah, I think you got a point, Austin.
Yeah.
I'm gonna go with Austin on this.
I do have a serious question. What are you guys' thoughts on her motives? Like,
Well,
do you think she killed him? Like, what do you think her motives
Well,
were?
that's another interesting thing is they had pulled up a bunch of her racist texts and tweets from like previous years, like and just a few days before the shooting, she had sent like racist texts to some of her friends.
Yeah, but they were, I mean, I'm not going to defend them because I think they were wrong, but they were kind of like Sam Hyde type of jokes, if that makes sense. Like, it wasn't like just straight up, oh, I hate black people. It was just very insensitive jokes. And I can completely see the argument for calling that racist, but I don't think it's as black and white as some people make it seem as well.
But you don't think there was any malice behind it?
I see you guys are having to mute yourselves there. No, I don't. I personally, I genuinely think she was in the wrong, or she thought she was in her apartment. But that doesn't excuse the ways that she handled the situation once she was in there. I mean,
So wait, what do you think her motives were? I just wanted to know. Like,
no, I genuinely think she thought she was in her apartment. I don't think she really had any motives.
so should she have been tried for? Should she have been convicted of murder then? Because like, doesn't that take a motive?
Yeah, well, that's the thing. It's hard to say because in my mind, I don't see how you, in your right mind, could just.
She could have been. She could have been convicted of. I think there's some sort of negligent manslaughter.
Like that's what I would. But murder, like you have to put a motive to it, right?
I think though because I think they went with murder in this scenario because usually manslaughter is like, yeah, I was carelessly driving down the road and ran over someone. It's not usually like, oh, I pulled out a gun and shot somebody on accident. You know what I mean?
Well, but like, what was her motive? Like, you have to have a motive behind the murder if it's intentional.
Right.
Well, the prosecution argued that she was racist. And it's become somewhat of a racial case because prosecution attorneys were saying after the murder conviction was released or whatever, once the jury came to a conclusion, the prosecution was pretty much saying, this is a victory for black people and that this is for the Trayvon Martins, and they mean these black people who had been killed in somewhat similar manners.
How many people were saying this?
This was from the prosecution, but there's been a ton of commentators on this saying the same things. But unfortunately, it's gotten political, as does everything nowadays in our society. And I wanted to stay away from that in this conversation. But yeah, the prosecution believes that she was a racist.
I could see making the argument that maybe not racist, but like if you want to fuel it by race or if you want to look for motive, you could say that she was only afraid because it was a black dude.
But like,
and that could be a motive if you argue fear. Like maybe it's not malicious, but it is kind of like she intended to kill him because she thought he was a housebreaker. But I mean, if you make that kind of mistake, it's kind of unprecedented, right?
Yeah.
I think the argument is over. Is that can that be really counted as a mistake, where you just wander in and then you pull out a gun and shoot somebody?
Well, I think the
'Cause she
fact
was
that
intending to shoot, to kill, or at least to wound, to put him down.
I just
well,
wonder what the
she
point
said that
is.
she intended to kill him when she shot him.
Yeah.
I think what hurts her the most is the fact that she, at the time, was a 5-year veteran in law enforcement, because she completely did away with all of her training, and how you're supposed to handle a situation like this, and just went. What it seems to me, she just went by the seat of her emotions and was scared and fearful, and just shot the guy. And I mean, it's sad. And I believe he was 26, 27 at the time. That's a terrible way for somebody that young to lose their life. And uh, maybe one of you guys can look up like what the definition of murder would be in a court case, because Austin, you keep bringing up,
Well,
was there a motive,
she only went to prison for 10 years. You could go to you could be, for manslaughter, you can go to prison longer than 10 years. I'm like, are they trying to get the death penalty?
No,
Like, what was the purpose of calling it murder? Like, what did the prosecution and black people benefit from that versus manslaughter?
right, that's what I don't understand, because manslaughter can have a maximum of 20 years, I believe it is. And I'm not sure what the law is in Texas, but um, it's to me it seems, I mean, I'm okay with the murder um, sentencing, but I think if you're gonna sentence someone for murder, it needs to be a much longer conviction than 10 years.
That's what I was thinking. I'm like, why would you? I know someone murdered someone and you only give them 10 years.
I feel like they gave a light sentence just because of the circumstances surrounding
Sounds like a
it.
freak accident, if you ask me. Just from when I first heard it, I was like, oh, that's really unlucky. You end up on the wrong floor, you work 13 hours.
Yeah, I agree, and it's just a shame all the way around. And she had said, now again, this is in court, and you don't know what the attorneys are telling them to say, but
Right.
I believe it's genuine, given the way she looked. I don't think someone was faking it, but she had said, I wish it had been Botham with the gun, and I wish he had shot and killed me. I just want all of this to be over. She seems super remorseful for what's happened.
Well, I was pretty impressed with the way Botham's younger brother handled his statement at the hearing.
Yeah, I was gonna get to that at the end, because that's what kind of like, thankfully that's been the highlight of this case, and none of that's overshadowed any of the political stuff. And I think that's been a real positive to come out from this case. And I really commend the kid for what he did, because I don't think I would have been able to do that.
Right. So.
And what did he do?
Yeah, I think this would be a perfect time to brief us on what all went down with that.
So after the conviction came out, her brother, or not her brother, his Botham's younger 18-year-old brother took the stand, and he addressed Miss Guyger, and he was pretty much saying, I forgive you. If there was anything Botham would want, he would just want you to come to Jesus. So I'm presuming his family is a Christian. But then he said what struck out to me, struck me the most, was when he said, if it were up to me, you wouldn't even be going to jail. And I thought, wow, I wonder even what his family thought when he said that. But after all of that, after addressing her in such a nice and loving way, he asked the judge if he could give her a hug, and he was choking up throughout his statement, and the judge. It appeared that the judge could barely even give an answer because she was crying so much. And then she said that he could, and he embraced Amber Guyger, and the whole courtroom was just in tears. When I watched the video, it brought me to tears. So it was just a very powerful moment, and that's been the highlight of this whole case, and I think that's what people are really taking away from this. So I think that's great that that's overshadowing all the negatives of this case.
Yeah, I think, and I almost wonder if that plays into how that 10-year sentence happened too. If it was because it was a result of all that emotion and the theme of forgiveness going on in the courtroom, right?
Yeah, I'm not sure if the sentencing came before that or after that. That would be something to look up for sure. Um, but even reporters, like even the judge herself, everybody was in tears, and it was a very powerful moment. Something that people will still talk about in years to come, in my opinion.
You think this one's going to go in the history books?
I definitely think so, just because it's one of those cases where you're just like, man, that sucks, and there's no winners or losers here. It's just terrible all the way around, and that's why I don't really understand the murder conviction too much. But I mean, I can live with it. It's just the sentencing, the amount of time with a murder conviction doesn't make sense at all.
Yeah, like how many murderers could be like working like at McDonald's at like 50 or you know what I mean? Like there are very many people that have been convicted of murder, I bet, and really 10 years you're not that much different, right? She's probably in her 30s, I'm guessing.
Well, and I think it was because it wasn't like, I mean, it's not like your regular murder case where it's like,
Well, yeah.
I was robbing them, and then they started to run for help, so I shot them in the back as they were running away from me.
No, yeah. I hate all of it too. It just stinks that guy.
But yeah, it was a terrible misunderstanding.
At the very least, some leg shots.
Yeah. Well, he was
that's no, but the prosecution pressed her on that, and she admitted she shot to kill, as I stated. She intentionally shot him in the chest.
Which you do when you're in a self-defense situation.
Yeah. But I mean,
no, you're supposed to shoot the gun out of their hand.
Yeah.
That's what I was
according to
told.
all the TV shows I've ever seen.
That's what you do, Jordan.
I don't know, man. I'd say go for the kneecaps.
Yeah.
What, so they don't walk behind anymore? The counter? Dude,
that's too hard to hit.
Mean.
It's too hard to hit. It'd be much easier to shoot a gun out of someone's hand.
Yeah.
It's also much easier to just shoot someone in the head.
Yeah, that's
boom,
true.
Headshot.
But then you go to jail.
Oh.
Yeah, you didn't think about
that.
that.
Is that why I bet that's why she shot him in the chest. That might be one of the biggest reasons, though, because it was the biggest target.
It's because it's the biggest lethal target.
That's what you're always trained to do. You always shoot for the chest.
Police officers
Center mass,
too?
Yep.
Yeah, center mass.
Even if they're not...
Because you only shoot them when you're intending to kill.
Really?
They usually dump like the whole mag in the guy.
Lethal force.
You're
they
right,
do.
Dude.
They usually just like go pop, 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 pop.
Trayvon Martin or like all those guys just have like.
Well, Trayvon Martin wasn't shot by a cop. He was shot by a neighborhood watch guy.
Yeah.
Some guy wearing a cape or something stupid.
What?
That's not true at all.
Austin, I'm not sure you understand the concept of a neighborhood watch.
Trayvon
we can talk about
was wearing a hoodie.
No, I'm saying
and it was not a vigilante.
We can talk about some vigilante.
We can talk about that after the podcast, though. We can clear this all up.
Have you actually listened to the audio tape from? Was it Zimmerman that did it?
Yeah.
It's like really bad. He's like he's walking in our neighborhood or something weird like that, and he's like, I'm gonna go get him. Or it's just like horrifying.
I don't think I've heard
that.
I took an ethnic studies class, and we went over that, and we went over this and stuff, and it's just every time something like this happens, I just feel terrible. I do feel a need for justice to some degree, but mostly I just feel terrible about everybody. Like it's just there's no
lose situation.
Yeah,
it's just senseless. It's that's what it is, and it's a shame.
And muddying the waters even further, there's cases like this with Botham Jean, where he's just sitting at home, minding his business, or like Trayvon Martin just walking back
Yeah.
doing his thing. But then there's also the cases like I think the one in Ferguson where they said he had his hands up and his back to the officer, but like all the other reports say he was charging him, and then they also said, but he's only like an 18-year-old kid, but he was like 6'3" or something, and like 280 pounds or something like that. So I mean, it's like, okay, he's not really just, at that point you're full grown.
Yeah, and another thing I will say, I mean, I think it's relevant, but at the same time, it's kind of horrible. In a lot of these cases, both defense and prosecution will try to dig up dirt on people, but there was not much dirt that could be found on Botham John, which I think is another telling side of this case. Whereas with Trayvon Martin or a lot of these other cases, they had, whether it was a history with law enforcement or doing, different illegal activities. But I think the only thing they said about Botham John was that he smoked weed at one point or he sold it at one point, something
Yeah.
like that,
They like
But
found it in his house, didn't they?
Yeah, he was just,
yeah,
and I mean, at this point, he was just a young professional. He was an accountant at PwC.
yeah, he was an accountant like you, Win.
True.
Oh.
And another thing I found real quick that I thought was pretty relevant. The sentencing could have been a maximum of 99 years. So they definitely chose a sentence on the lower end of the spectrum, as we.
I
already know.
believe if I remember correctly, how this works is because we keep saying things like they chose. I think what happens is the jury chooses like a verdict. So they say, okay, yeah, you're guilty of murder or you're guilty of manslaughter, and then those can carry a range of penalties that then the judge decides how severe the penalty is within that range.
That's what I thought too, but I've been researching it while we've been talking, and under Texas law, the 12-member jury that convicted Guyger was also tasked with determining her punishment,
okay.
So they chose it. But typically, you're right. And
okay, so to those people listening to this, just ignore everything I've said up to this point because it seems to have been wrong.
What?
You just had the story completely wrong.
Say that again?
I said, so for everybody listening at home, just ignore everything I've said up to this point because it just seems to have been wrong.
I know, dude. Well, you're keeping us honest. That's what you're here for. And
Here to spread lies.
So we can be honest.
Yeah, I'm just slinging the bowl.
After Botham's brother said all that, I thought this was pretty cool too. The judge who was presiding over the case, she went and hugged each member of the Johns family, but then she also approached Amber Guyger and handed her a Bible and hugged her too. So, I just think it's cool that everybody at the end of the day kind of came together and realized like this whole situation sucks, and I think everybody realized that she was genuinely thinking that she had to defend herself, but at the same time it was just completely
negligent.
Negligent, that's the word, on her part, and she was just, there was no reason why she even should have thought that was her apartment in the first place. There was also reports of like the decorum in his apartment was so different than her own apartment, so it's just a terrible situation. But at the end of the day, everybody just kind of uniting was really encouraging to see, especially in this year 2019, with how divided our country has become. So it's an interesting case, and I think it's been good talking about it.
Yeah, and that kind of hits on a point I was also thinking about was I was watching this video where the guy was talking about how our culture has lost this ability to forgive other people. So like with a lot of these things that come out where like something bad happens, right? Or like someone that's in the public eye, like some sort of history comes out about them where they have, I don't know, they do something, they say something racist or they say something off color. And it's basically like, okay, well, they're done. There's no chance for redemption. They're forced. They're basically sentenced to walk around the earth for the rest of their days with like the mark of Cain on their head. That's a biblical reference. Look it up. But like basically just being hated by everyone they run into for the rest of their life, which I think there should be room for. I mean, obviously depending on what happens. Like if you're a serial killer and you're just, or not even just a serial killer, if you're just out killing people in cold blood, like yeah, okay, you should probably. I would argue for the death penalty in a scenario like that.
Just to get you to stop, really.
But yeah.
Yeah.
In other scenarios, though, I mean, there has to be room for redemption, right? There has to be room for someone to become a, positive part of society again.
Yeah, it's really a case by case basis, like there's so many cases out there where it just you don't know and it could go either way. One that comes to mind, I'd love to do a podcast about this, but we'd all have to do a ton of research, is the Menendez brothers trial. And they're serving a life sentence in prison for murdering their parents, but that they were also, and they've got a decent amount of evidence to substantiate their claim, but they were also being severely sexually abused by their father from the age of like 8 or 9 until they decided to murder him, which I think the younger one was around like 18 at the time. So, there's so many cases out there where, you just don't know. And it's just crazy to think that people could be like serving life sentences or on death row and they're completely innocent, like with this case, it was clear, the evidence was clear, but it's not always clear in what it's chalked up to be. And sometimes politics can get involved and a whole bunch of different things. And it's pretty scary stuff when you think about
it. Sorry. All right, I think we can. That's a good
That's
way to wrap it
we'll
up.
end
Thank
it.
you, George, for closing that out.
You don't understand. Austin hit it real fast, laughed, and then hit it again.
For like 2 seconds. It was like, dude.
This is amazing. We can mute ourselves when we just
Austin
want to
and Jay
make
cannot
inappropriate
keep their
noises.
composure, man.
Well,
Anyways.
that concludes our discussion. And look forward to talking with you all next week.
Yeah, thanks for listening to the podcast, everyone. Keep a lookout for that audio not fit for public consumption.
Yeah.
Yeah, and we'll also be starting our own social media account soon. So look out
Also,
for that.
keep an eye out for our merchandise going live next week.
Oh, yeah.
No, please. I don't want to get sued for something like that. Not this time. Not this time.
Why would we get sued?
I don't know. It's some weird, false claim.
You told me there was going to be t-shirts.
Oh.
We need to make a logo still. We don't even have
Oh,
that.
wait a minute, guys. I just had an epiphany. We could sell coffee mugs.
Genius. Anyways, we'll catch you guys later. Peace out.